Hello, students. I wanted to give y'all just a quick couple minutes to talk about culturally responsive pedagogy. Culturally responsive teaching, culturally relevant pedagogy, those terms are kind of interchangeable. They are a idea that whatever curriculum you use in the classroom needs to be focused on the culture of your students. For example, I used to teach in a school that was 98% Hispanic. Many of my students were from low-income homes. Many of them lived in an area that had high gang activity. I was in their classroom as a white woman, and I would often struggle with making connections to their culture from what we were learning. This is back when I first started teaching, and I didn't understand the idea of making sure that your curriculum and your teaching and instruction was culturally responsive or culturally relevant. So I remember one day, it was an integrated physics and chemistry class. I was working hard to teach them about some of the physics behind roller coasters. And so I just asked the class, I said, how many of you have ever ridden a roller coaster? One person. These kids were junior high. They were 14 years old, 13, 14 years old. I was shocked. Most white kids that I knew had at least been to some type of theme park or had gotten to ride a roller coaster of some type. And this was not the case for these students. So immediately I realized that my entire lesson was based on my own assumption that my students had had the same cultural and life experiences as I had. This, of course, is very short-sighted, as you can see. I had to think about how I could instead change the narrative of what I was teaching and how I was teaching it to identify with their curriculum or with their culture. I had to change my curriculum to make sure I could connect with their culture. So it took me a few days to figure out how I could do that. So we went through several different iterations of some physics concepts, and I asked them to come up with their own cultural application. So I heard many different things. A lot of them had to do with video games. A lot of them played video games, and they could connect with a character on their video game. Like, for example, one kid was talking about this game where his character was able to jump from building to building and had this special ability to do that. So we were able to apply our physics concept to that character being able to jump from one building to another building. We were talking about speed, we were talking about force, mass, acceleration, and it fit very well with that, and the student was able to connect with that instead of with the culturally limited viewpoint that I had presented as the teacher. So I want you to look at this webpage. You can look it up if you like on your own. It's a webpage that Brown University sponsors, and it just talks about culturally responsive teaching. And keep in mind, since we are doing educational technology, culturally responsive teaching is actually very much key to this. We don't want culturally limited technology, because so much of curriculum is already culturally limited because of people like me. People like me that think, oh, well, all kids have had the experience of riding a roller coaster by the time they're 14, which is very limited. So I want you to look at these 7 different things that are in the research of Gloria Ladson-Billings. She is one of the most respected scholars in the field of culturally responsive teaching. She says that your curriculum, your technology, should have positive perspectives on parents and families. It should communicate high expectations of those people. Learning should be done in the context of culture. Students should be able to be given time and space to share how they can connect their culture to the content. Instruction should be student-centered. It should be culturally mediated, meaning students should be able to share with each other. There shouldn't be one culture that is preferred over another culture. Just because you have more white kids in your class doesn't mean that you should forget about giving the Hispanic students opportunity to share their culture. Curriculum should be reshaped, just like I had to do in my class. Curriculum based on assumptions, cultural assumptions, does not match with necessarily the culture of your students. And teachers should realize that they are just facilitators. The classroom is not about you as a teacher. The classroom is always about the student. Okay, so we're going to look quickly at, this is iStation. It is a very common technology product that schools use for digital literacy. As you can see over here to the left, it's showing some different screenshots of the program. And I want you as students to see what genders of people are on the screen, what races are on the screen, what cultural connections do you see on the screen? Is it diverse? Is it one-sided? For example, that question kind of went through very brief. You can see the Liberty Bell right here, okay? You can see a spaceship game. Many children have probably played a little spaceship game. Right here you see a white student, you see female, male with blonde hair. You see some aliens right here. Right here you see an African American male. Next screen you're going to see African American people, a strange character over here, a yellowish whitish male. Look for the people in the technology. Who is the technology presenting as experts or as characters, and how are they presented? Is it diverse? If you teach at a school that has 98% Hispanic students, does your technology need to reflect that demographic? Does it need to just include white people in the technology? No, it needs to include people that represent the students that are in your class. This often can be very hard. A lot of technology producers do not understand or even know about culturally responsive teaching. That's why it's your job as a technology expert to make sure that your technology is representing all. One quick thing, does your technology show people that have special needs? Many times these special needs populations are left out of technology representations. Find technology that includes them. Always use technology that is accessible and that represents people from all cultures equally and respectfully.